Assalamu alaikum. This is lecture 36 of Advanced Cost and Management Accounting. In this lecture, we are going to look at the learning and growth perspective. This is the perspective from the view of balance scorecard. We have up to now, in examining the balance scorecard, discussed three perspectives. One, the financial perspective. Two, the customer perspective. Three, the internal processes perspective. And the fourth common perspective of the balance scorecard is the learning and growth perspective. So today we are going to examine the learning and growth perspective. We have said that for the organization to ensure sustainability, continuity in the medium to long term, so the horizon is slightly larger and longer term, and we are not looking at the immediate future. Therefore, when we look at the horizon and we look at a few years ahead, then in order to achieve continuity of the business and to ensure business sustainability, we are saying that learning and growth will represent an important perspective and an essential aspect which sometimes gets ignored, not sufficient focus is given, not sufficient attention and investment is given, with the result that organizations suffer. And if there is no growth in this current environment, we can more or less say the organizations will find it hard to continue. We have said earlier that the concept of the business existing in this manner, where the graph of growth is flat, in other words, there is no growth, it virtually doesn't exist. The organizations either have to have an upward trend and continue to grow, or invariably they fall into the downward trend and continue to decline until a point where they have to shut down and close. So learning and growth is a perspective which organizations will need to take special measure, and they will need to set their objectives and measure their objective and their achievement of that objective in order to ensure its implementation. So learning and growth, we have to then try to refer to what we are talking about, learning and growth. Learning in the organization is a matter of staff training, it's a matter of improvement, it's a matter of continuing improvement. You will recall we talked about TQM, Total Quality Management, and we said the philosophy is continuous improvement. So organizations, in order to ensure sustainability and continued existence, they need to have continual learning and growth. How are the objectives to be set and how are they to be measured? We'll look at that in this session. Learning and growth perspective identifies the infrastructure that the business must build to create long-term growth and improvement. So we are saying this perspective is going to identify the infrastructure which the organization must build to create long-term growth and improvement. By infrastructure, we mean virtually the entire organization. In order to have long-term growth and continuity and profitability, what is going to be required? The infrastructure will, of course, include, as you grow, the machinery and the buildings and the requirement of space and everything. And very importantly, it's going to include staff, the employees. As you grow, you must have adequately trained staff, you must have adequately trained and efficient staff working in all the departments to handle the growth. So there is a need to grow the employees as you go along, and the organization grows. And we are, as I said, looking at the longer term. So this will form a part of the strategic plan, that where you want the growth to take place, how much and how fast you expect the growth to occur, and accordingly you build in the infrastructure. In an example of producing a product through some machinery, each machine has a capacity. So if we are going to go beyond the capacity of the machine and we still want to grow, we have to add another machine. This is part of the infrastructure. Now, the machines are placed, let's say, in some hall. And so if we are going to, the hall is going to have a capacity. So a time may come where in order to add machines and continue to grow, you might need another additional hall, additional space to house those machines. And then there could be various other aspects related to production. Utilities is a common one, that you have sufficient utilities to provide for X number of machines and X amount of production. But as you grow your production and as you grow your sales, then those utilities will need to expand and they will need to grow. And similarly, this can be extended to the warehousing, where you have X number of units being stored because of your daily production. And if your daily production increases beyond a certain point, you might need additional warehousing space. So this is part of the infrastructure, and also you will need to increase your employees and staff accordingly to handle the different growth and expansion aspect. So at the moment, if you have X number of people who are looking up and looking after one function, when the work requirement of that grows, then you might need to increase the number of people. So we are saying that this perspective of learning and growth is going to identify the entire infrastructure that would be required accordingly and to achieve your growth in the long run. It's a part of strategic planning, it's a part of long-term thinking, and it's something that organizations must look at when they have a growth outlook. Investment in the future, other than in assets and R&D, which is included in innovation and internal processes perspective. In the learning and growth, we are going to specifically look at the investment in the future, but other than R&D and other than assets. Assets and R&D, we have said, is going to be covered under innovation, and that we have covered under the operation processes, internal business processes. So now we are going to look beyond the assets and we are going to look beyond the R&D. R&D is essential for learning and growth, but that has been covered separately. People, systems, and organization procedures to provide capabilities that enable accomplishment of other three perspectives: people, system, organization, procedures. Now we are looking at this aspect. One can sometimes describe that as the softer side of the business. The people, the systems, the procedures. Absolutely needed for your growth perspective. First of all, the quality of people, their motivation, their commitment. Essentially, most of the managers of leading organizations have said that the difference is made by the people. In the organization, the difference is made by the people. So focus on the people, on their quality and on their training and on their development. That is an essential part, which is what we are going to examine in this section. So people and systems. If you have a small operation and a small setup, the systems that are required might not be very extensive and very elaborate and might not need such big computerization programs as we refer to the enterprise resource planning programs, ERPs. And supervision is much easier, and perhaps fewer number of people can supervise activities and events in a smaller operation. But once you have a growth perspective, and once you plan to expand and increase, and you want to increase the size of your production, the size and the capacities of your production, and you want to grow, then the need for supervision, the need for controls, the need for organized systems, this continues to enhance. And more, the more you grow, the more the need for organized systems in place is required with proper controls in position in order to operate in an orderly and effective manner. We have referred to earlier the cases of ERPs. These are large integrated softwares and programs which are now being implemented in organizations in the different departments and different aspects which cover virtually the entire organization. And in these ERPs, the difference now is that input into the system is being done at the place of the operation. So the people involved in the operation are going to input the data themselves, and that data needs to be accurate, it needs to be verified, and it is going to be used by others, and the entire operation is being run in large organizations on an online basis, real-time basis. So information fed in one department in one part is then accessed by another department, and they are going to make decisions and take all actions necessary based on the information. So the need for systems and procedures to be developed grows with the growth of the organization. It needs a special focus, a special attention. Learning and growth, three principal categories. We are going to discuss three principal categories in this learning and growth perspective: employee capabilities, the information system capabilities, and motivation, empowerment, and alignment. Now that we have identified that learning and growth is basically referring to the systems, the employees, the systems, and the procedures. So what are the three different principal categories we are looking at? We said we are looking at employee capabilities. So we are going to set objectives, and we are going to measure how we have achieved and accomplished the objectives relating to employees. So employees are going to be looked at. The information systems capabilities are going to be looked at, and motivation, empowerment, and alignment. Information system is the system and procedures in the organization that provide management with the results of their actions and the results of the transactions to help decision making. So systems are in place to, at every different part of the organization, to record information and to bring that information to the management to enable further decision making and to enable them to assess the results of their decisions. So the system capabilities need to be looked at. And thirdly, we said motivation, empowerment, and alignment. What is motivation? The employees that are working in the organization, are they trying to do their best? Do they understand the goals of the organization, the objectives? And are they committed to performing and performing excellence. Motivation, and there are different ways, and we are going to discuss and cover what are the ways in which motivation can be measured. Empowerment is also a concept that has come out relatively recently, and it's become very important and very useful because the employees that are at the forefront of the operations, they are the ones who are performing the operations. When you want to bring about improvements and changes, then they are the best people to inform you what are the options and what are the courses that can be taken. So if they feel empowered, by empowered we mean they understand the purpose of that activity in a wider context, in the organizational context, and how it meets the organization's objectives, then those employees are in a good position to inform and advise onto newer ways and better ways and more efficiency and greater efficiency and effectiveness of the operations. It has been said of various successful organizations, and I think that includes our nuclear program also, that the reason for achievement of the objectives primarily has been that all the employees from top to bottom, they understood the purpose, they were committed to the purpose, they appreciated the significance and the importance, and therefore their motivation was at a high level. So motivation, empowerment, and alignment. Alignment is nearly the same sort of concept, that you are aligning your efforts and objectives are aligned with that of management. You want to achieve just the same as what the management is trying to achieve. The employees and management are part of the same system. They are what they say as they are on the same page. They are working towards the same goal. And by that, we can also include the various different departments of the organization. We referred to an example where to measure efficiency of production, you would see how well they are using their resources. Now, if they are using their resources very well, they produce effectively and efficiently, they might produce quantities which are not easily sellable, and they are more than the current customer orders. So that is might lead to a waste, and that is an excess inventory, excess cost tied up. So from the overall organization perspective, that is not goal alignment. So alignment means everyone is also working towards the same objective, and they have the overall organization perspective in mind. Virtually no effort has been devoted to measuring the outcomes relating to the above three categories. When it was a matter of production and quality, and when it was a matter of marketing and selling, we saw that there was a great deal of attention to the detail of ways in which objectives were set. When it was a matter of customers, the manner in which measurement of objectives has been set. This now study has shown that very little or no attention has been paid to the measurement of the objectives that we have just set for learning and growth. In other words, for employees, for the systems, and for motivation, etc. So this aspect has been somewhat less of a focus from the perspective of organizations' achievement of objectives. And therefore, this perspective now is being given greater focus. It is separately identified now on the balanced scorecard. Once you have the balanced scorecard and you have all your perspective, if you can identify this as a separate perspective on the balanced scorecard, then greater attention will be given to it. Identification of objectives specifically for this perspective will be set, and there will be greater focus and need for improvement, etc., identified. So we are saying that traditionally the focus has been not so much on the employees and the systems with regard to the overall sustainability and profitability of the organization. This perspective is giving additional focus and attention in your performance measurement of the organization. So separate objectives are going to be set and performance separately measured for the objectives we stated of employee capability, systems, development, and the motivation aspect. Employee capabilities. 3 common core measurement outcomes: employee satisfaction, employee retention, employee productivity. Employee satisfaction measured using surveys. Typically, they are requested to specify on a scale from dissatisfied to highly satisfied for a list of questions that measure employee satisfaction. Examples of questions relate to involvement in decisions, encouragement to be creative, and use initiative. The way in which the objective of employee capabilities can be measured very often is through questionnaires. A questionnaire is designed where on one side you have a lot of questions relating to the perspective, relating to employee satisfaction, and the employees are required to fill out the questionnaire, and they have a scale in front of them ranging perhaps from dissatisfied to satisfied to highly satisfied. So they can, for all the questions asked, identify their level of satisfaction with the organization. So such a survey is going to provide a feedback information on what employee capabilities are. The type of questions is also important, how you're going to frame the questions and what you're going to ask them. And if you are going to ask them how they are encouraged to participate in decisions, how they are encouraged to take initiative, how they are encouraged to make suggestions, and there are sometimes very defined, specific forums for this. So for the employee to be able to answer positively about their involvement in decision making and in their involvement in initiatives and how they are encouraged, very often organizations now have separate forums of discussions. This is time well spent by the organization. The organizations take time away. Of course, this is not routine operational work, but you invite the employees to a separate forum for a separate discussion, and you set out the objectives and agenda for the discussion. And in that, you can include the innovation perspective, you can include the efficiency perspective, you can include the productivity perspective, and you can get the views of employees from that. This is turning out to be a useful exercise, and it is given different names. However, they invite employees ranging from different levels of seniority right down to the junior employees. So when you have a cross-section of employees of one department or one function, and you have different levels of employees, and they're all invited to a sort of informal discussion where they can come and express their views, this is an indication of employee involvement in decision making. And especially if you can formalize that in sort of a way, and you can identify within the meeting the objectives and the steps that have been discussed and suggested, and subsequently when you go and implement those steps and they show a level of success, which should be shared with the employees, then that will give the employees a sense of participation in the decision-making process. And that is what is going to enhance motivation, and it is going to enhance the alignment of the goals. So different levels of management and employees are on forums where specified objectives are laid out and agenda laid out for measures taken to improve either the quality or the efficiency or the productivity, and those measures are then documented and circulated and then acted upon. And once they are acted upon, then the benefit is for the organization, and the employees are likely to feel that they have been encouraged and involved. This process, therefore, should be separately identified, and it should be conducted at a fairly senior level. Involvement and perhaps inclusion of the business head is going to make this forum more effective, and it will enhance its importance and ensure the issues which are currently faced by management and senior management are being included and discussed in these meetings. So the questionnaires, which survey questionnaires, they are a means of obtaining feedback from employees on how well they feel motivated. Employee retention can be measured by annual percentage of key staff that leave. Employee retention, this means you retain the staff, especially the key staff. Retain them, they continue with the organization, and they continue to serve the same organization, and they don't find necessity to look elsewhere, to go to other organizations. Now, this retention is also an important aspect, because with the employee, the experience of the organization is related. So where you have an organization where the employees have, let's say, 10 to 20 years of experience, they have been in the organization, they have seen the effect of different events on the organization. They have experienced the ups and downs of the organizations. They have an understanding of the organization and their goals and their achievements. So continuity is regarded as of use and benefit to the organization. So employee retention should be a program of the organization, and their own efforts should be made to identify means and ways of ensuring employee retention. The way to measure would be to see in a period how many key employees have left. Key employees are those which are holding key positions, important positions, senior or junior, and their departure from the organization should be viewed as a negative influence on the organization, especially in relation to learning and growth. So we said employee capabilities is an important part, and employee retention is the next important objective. Employee productivity. Many methods can be used. A generic method is sales revenue per employee. The third objective to be measured is employee productivity. By employee productivity, we mean what output has been obtained from the employees. And there are different ways of measuring this. Of course, organizations are at all times trying to increase the productivity from the employees, enhance them, and motivation and all that is a part of the same process. Employee productivity can be measured in a very generic and general way by looking at the overall sales. If the overall sales per employee have increased, that means chances are that all employees are producing and their productivity is increasing. So this also requires focus in our learning and growth perspective, and employee productivity needs to be measured. Information systems capabilities. Excellent information is needed on customers, internal processes, and financial consequences of decisions. The second aspect of learning and growth, we said, was the information system capability. More and more organizations are beginning to realize that their decisions are only as good as the quality of information which they have. And this is also, of course, very true. The quality of decisions are dependent on the quality of information which they have. The more current the information, the more accurate the information which management has, the more better and more directed and guided the decision making is going to be. So the information system capability is playing an important role now. And one example of a strong and integrated system providing online current information is the ERPs. Within the organization, the ERP systems are all integrated so that when, for example, goods are received, the goods received receiving section will enter information and it will become available to various other parts of the organization that these goods are available and in store. When production takes place, the production people will enter into the system what goods have been produced, and it becomes available to all other parts of the organization, and they know what goods are available to be shipped and delivered. Selling is also able to view the information available on the production, and therefore they can see whether their customer orders are being met in time, and so forth. So the availability of online information is an essential and becoming more and more important. One example of online information availability and its importance for accuracy is your airline ticketing systems. When you go to purchase an airline ticket for a journey, the airline agent or selling office, they have to have available information on their screens at that time for that specific flight. What are the number of seats that are available? What are the seats that have been sold? In order to organize themselves and ensure that the agents, they sell only the available seats and don't get into other problems of overselling, they have to ensure all agents have online basis, they have information on the seats available and the seats sold so that they can, when required, issue the tickets. So this is an example of online information availability. In some hospitals these days, you walk into the hospital, if you have been there before, you give them your name or some kind of code number. When they enter that, your entire patient history becomes available on the screen. So this is online information. They can see what the patient had, what problems they had before, what kind of diagnosis was there, what kind of medication was given. So this is an example of online information availability, and then also from one department to another, so that when the patient travels from one department to the different department, the other department, for example, knows there has been an X-ray taken or there has been some other test performed, and the information is available online for diagnosis and for treatment. So this is an example of online information. Most organizations are now gearing up to have systems capabilities that allow them to access information on an online current basis. What are the events and activities that have taken place? If it's a manufacturing organization, what goods have been received, what goods have been processed, what goods are available, what goods have been shipped, what are required to be shipped, what are unshipped orders, and so forth. So a whole range of information becomes available if your system is capable, and the accuracy of the system is equally important, and it has to be accurate to be reliable. So systems capabilities are now becoming more and more important, and for learning and growth, this is a requirement, and objectives need to be set and measured. Measures of strategic information availability include percentage of processes with real-time, quality, cycle time, and cost feedback, and percentage of online information about customers. So that's how you can measure the system capability, by seeing how much information is available online, whether it relates to quality or whether it relates to inventory or whether it relates to cost. If that information is available online currently, accurately, this is an indication that systems are capable and adequate to provide necessary information. We are now going to move to a new topic of quantitative models for planning and control of stocks. Investment in stocks represents a major asset in most organizations. To determine optimum level of investment in stocks, two conflicting requirements must be met. First, stocks must be sufficient to meet requirement, and second, it must avoid holding surplus stock that are unnecessary and increase the risk of obsolescence. The topic of stocks is an important one because it represents a large part of the assets of most organizations. Inventory can be seen, trucks being loaded and being received at the factory gates. There is some documentation to identify the stocks received, and there is some approval process to ensure what goods have been received are in line with what has been ordered. And similarly, goods are being stored in warehouses, so the warehousing space needs to be large enough to accommodate all the inventory. And capacity of the warehouses will depend on the amount of inventory expected, the amount of movement, and there has to be adequate planning of the warehouse, of the movements of the inventory and goods in between. And then similarly, you can see that inventory is then shipped onto trucks and then delivered to markets where it is sent to different shops. So inventory is an important asset in most organizations. Now, decisions regarding inventory, therefore, are likely to affect cost and are likely to affect the profitability of the organization. So it's essential that this asset is very carefully examined, and this asset is the cost relating to it have been minimized. We said that there are two aspects. One is that the stocks must be sufficient to meet the requirements. So there should not be a shortage of stocks. You must always have enough stocks in hand to meet your requirement. At the same time, you should not have such excess of stocks that it becomes a burden, it becomes a cost, it shows inefficiency or obsolescence, because if it stays in your warehouses and stored for long periods, then defects start to develop and therefore result in losses. So these two aspects have to be managed. One aspect is that it should not be insufficient. They should always be sufficient to meet the requirement. And the other aspect is they should not be too much. You can't afford to have too much, because there you are going to build in extra cost. This is going to lead us to the discussion of the optimal stock level lies somewhere between these two extremes. We will examine the application of quantitative models for determining the optimum investment in stock. So we are going to discuss, and we are going to talk about a concept of the optimum level of stock. The optimum means it is neither too much nor too little. There is a balancing act required in arriving at the right amount of stock. And this is going to lead to discussion of how to achieve that optimum level. And we are going to see that there are quantitative techniques, quantitative methods in arriving at calculated levels of stock which minimize both the cost, and therefore provide you with the adequate amount of inventory. We shall consider the economic order quantity and the level at which stocks should be replenished. So in our discussion of quantitative methods, we are going to look at the economic order quantity. What is the economic order quantity? Stock is purchased by sending out purchase orders. Each purchase order will contain a certain amount, a certain value, and a certain quantity of stock. Now, the economic order quantity is looking at what should be the quantity on each order to provide the lowest cost of inventory to the organization. So what is the most economical quantity that should be included each time an order is sent to a supplier? This is the economic order quantity. So quantity of order is what we are focusing on in order to minimize our cost. What should be the quantity of each order to make it the most economical quantity for the organization? And we are going to discuss this from a quantitative methods perspective. We are going to include quantitative techniques to arrive at the most economical quantity for an order. Reasons for holding stocks. There are three general reasons for holding stocks. Transaction motive, to meet production and sales requirements. Precautionary motive, where supply of raw materials is unreliable. Speculative motive, where future input prices are expected to change. Three reasons have been given for holding stock. One is the transaction reason. This means the need to buy and sell, and you need to hold stock. Stock needs to be held so that when it's required for sales, it is available. That is the transaction reason. The other reason is the precautionary reason. The precautionary reason for holding stock means that you hold a slightly larger quantity of stock just in case you have a shortage of stock because there might be an unexpected increase in demand. So you hold as a precaution a certain amount of stock to make sure it is available. That's the precautionary reason. Third reason is the speculative reason. Speculative reason relates to the cost of material, where you expect that the cost of material consumed by you is going to increase significantly in the foreseeable future, in the near future. Then you might want to acquire a larger quantity at an early stage because that will be available at a lower cost. So that is a speculative reason for holding stock. So these are three different reasons for holding stock, and essentially our quantitative model is going to only refer to the first reason, the transaction reason. So in our review of the quantitative methods, we are going to only refer to the transactional reason. The quantitative models incorporate only the transactions motive for holding stock. We are going to therefore ignore the other reasons like the precautionary and the speculative reasons for holding stock, and our model is going to concentrate on the transaction motive for holding stock. Relevant costs for the quantitative model. Relevant costs for determining optimum stock level are holding costs and ordering costs. So when we are going to look at the optimum stock level, we are going to consider two types of cost. One, the holding cost, and two, the ordering cost. The holding cost is the cost that is incurred in holding the stock. Just because you own and you maintain stock and inventory, by holding the stock you are incurring the cost. That's the holding cost. And the other cost is the ordering cost. When you want to acquire new inventory, you send out purchase orders, purchase order is prepared and delivered. That cost is called ordering cost. So these are the two costs which we are going to consider in looking at our optimum stock levels. Holding cost consists of opportunity cost of investment in stocks, variable insurance cost, variable warehousing cost, variable material handling cost. Also, cost of obsolescence and deterioration in stock. Now, in these stocks, we are going to, looking at the cost of these stocks, we are going to examine basically the variable portion of stock. The variable portion of the cost is the cost that can be varied, can be reduced or increased by increasing or decreasing the number of and the quantity of stock. That is what is the relevant part. So we have said that the holding cost is going to include the opportunity cost of investment. In other words, if you invested the amount of money not in stocks but somewhere else, and you would have earned some return from that, so that is a cost of investing in inventory. So the opportunity cost of holding, the variable cost of insurance, and the variable cost of handling, and the variable cost of warehousing. Again, insurance, if we are paying fixed amounts of insurance, then it doesn't matter what level of stocks you hold, the cost would remain the same. So we are only going to consider the cost that would change with the quantity of stock. So the insurance cost, which varies according to the size of inventory held, that is the cost that we are going to consider as the holding cost. Then the storage cost is only that storage cost which can be varied with the increase or decrease of inventory. And also the handling cost, the material handling cost, we look at that part of the cost which is going to vary if we increase or decrease our stock. So we are looking at the variable costs in holding cost, and we are going to ignore the fixed cost. For example, if there is a fixed storage cost, one warehouse, and it can't be used for any other reason, it can't be let out, and that cost is to be incurred no matter what the level of inventory is, then that cost is irrelevant from the perspective of stock levels. Similarly, if you have storekeepers, handling cost, and those storekeepers are on a fixed monthly salary basis, then that cost is not going to vary if we are going to increase or decrease our level of stock. So we are looking at relevant costs, and relevant costs are those costs which are going to vary with the increase and decrease of stocks. The other cost we talked about is the cost of obsolescence and deterioration in stocks. Now, obsolescence, of course, is going to be considered, and whatever the obsolescence is going to be on an actual basis, and that will be part of our holding cost. If you hold inventory, large amounts for a longer period of time, then chances are that some of it is going to deteriorate and will not be in the good, perfect quality. As the amount of inventory increases, the inventory in stock increases, chances of deterioration also increase, so this cost is going to increase and go up. So therefore, this is going to be a relevant cost for inventory purposes. Holding costs not affected by changes in stock levels are not relevant costs. So in considering the optimal stock, we are looking at two major types of costs, the holding and the ordering cost. And we are going to look at those costs which are going to vary with the level of inventory. Those costs which are fixed are not going to be relevant to our workings because they will not vary with the level of inventory. So we are trying to minimize the cost of inventory, and we are going to minimize the variable cost of inventory and come to the optimal stock level by examining these variable costs. The costs which are not going to vary are not going to be relevant. That's all for this session. Thank you very much.